Hi, friends. Wanted to let you know that this episode contains some content that might be triggering. We talk about sexual exploitation, we talk about sex trafficking, we talk about bullying, and we talk about suicide and suicidal ideation. It's a really great episode. We don't go into a lot of detail, but we wanted to give you the heads up ahead of time so you have a choice.
Hello, hello.
Hello. I was
How are
seeing
you
one of
doing?
those ads. Well, that our theme song music today made me think of. I was seeing one of those ads on Insta or somewhere like that, where they were talking about find your people, find your classes without having to do silly dances. And I was like, we like to dance.
Silly.
We dance. Well, not that our dancing is silly, but
Right. I'm not picking
sometimes.
it up. Yeah. We talk. I was just thinking about the duck lips. We're still, talking about
Right?
duck lips and trying to figure it out. But I could tell you from dancing to not dancing, the dancing is better. You want to dance it in. Go ahead and get in your body. All those conversations will be easier to have.
Well, at Interplay, we do
Yeah.
dancing before board meetings and before regular meetings. So I fully
It's great.
recommend it's better when we're dancing. So,
Yeah, and as
how was
somebody
your
who is not an
week?
inner player, I would absolutely say it.
Right?
Um, my week was great. We talked about a lot before the show, and I've been thinking about a lot of this stuff over this past week. And I've honestly been thinking about you, Christine, been thinking about our conversation that we had and how grateful I am for you. We talk about
Thanks,
community,
friend.
of course. And like I told you, I was like, I got on on our call and you were trying to check on me and I was just flat. And I didn't even know that I was there.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's what you need community for. So you can start talking out loud and realize where you are and, whether it's your energy or a situation. And a lot of times that's what helps me get clarity and, get through seasons in a more effective way to where my attitude isn't stretching it out. So that's what I've been thinking about. Like, what do I need? What would I like to get done? Where am I at with everything that's on my plate right now?
Right?
Yeah, it was a beautiful week.
We were talking about the question of what is bringing you joy. And I have to tell you, I experienced some ridiculous joy this last weekend.
Oh, yeah, you have some
So,
updates for me. Tell me about it. What's going
right?
on?
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but I've been saving money for a couple of art projects because first of all, I'm thrifty. I want to get good deals. I have these projects. I always have 20 projects in my head, right? So a couple of my projects, I found the materials I needed this weekend because I got on Facebook Marketplace and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So the big one that somebody said to me this weekend, "Oh, you probably have to make an Instagram page for this project."
Okay.
So I got a tiny electric golf cart that
Okay.
the shape of I'm gonna paint it like a little Tykes car.
A Tykes car?
A little Tykes car. It's gonna be orange and yellow. Do you know what I'm talking about? The
No,
plastic Tykes
I think
car?
I'm aging myself as a young person. I don't know what you're talking about. Tykes?
Little Tykes cart. I'll
You're gonna
send
have
you
to
a
show me.
picture.
Okay.
I'll send you a
Okay.
picture. But I have been looking for this shape of a golf cart for years. Like, I have
Wow.
been having this vision for about 5 years,
Okay.
and, I found one that was an awesome deal, and I went over and the lady I don't know if you've ever bought anything off Facebook Marketplace, but,
I've sold stuff.
you have to be careful, you have to but the lady was like, "Are you really interested?" I'm like, "Look, I have been looking for this for years. Yes, we are really interested. We will
Yeah,
be there on Saturday. We arranged it
I love it.
and it was such a great deal. She said, "First of all, we lowered the price. We hadn't been getting any hits. We lowered the price. You come over and you buy it." And 6 people have reached out to say,
Wow.
"I want this." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's going home with
No,
me."
that's yours.
And I'm already looking to paint it. And then the second project I've been talking about this project for a couple of years also, but
Okay.
really strongly for this last year is, I wanna do an art vending machine. I don't know if you
Okay.
remember when I was in Portland. I mean, it's been years since I was in Portland, and I got this little doodad out of a
Mhm.
this is for our folks that are listening, it's a ceramic heart that's really got some good texture on it. It's got a lot of different colors, and it came out of a vending machine at the Portland airport. And when I
I don't think
saw
you
it and
showed me this.
experienced it, I was like, "Oh, I gotta do that." Like, I wanna do it for downtown Duluth, where local artists, you have a vending machine. So I got this antique cigarette machine for less than half price of what I've been looking for them, because it was already lower than the price I'd been looking, and I called the guy and I was like, "Hey," or message, you don't call him on Facebook, and I said, "Would you take half?" And he was like, "Absolutely." I'm like, "Ah."
Nice,
I mean, like,
nice.
my ancestors are proud, my art self is proud, my husband, he's proud, but he's a little grumpy because he's my lifter, like,
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's
business
awesome.
partner is proud, your business partner is
Right,
proud. You
thank
can put me
you,
on the
yeah.
list. You're
So I've
welcome.
got I'm going into 2026 with some big art projects, which I've been naming that after this season of caregiving and loss, that my capacity is coming back and I am ready for some really fun creative projects.
I
And
love that.
yeah, and I smiled so hard all weekend, like my cheeks are sore. Have you ever
I
had that
love that.
happen where you
Yes.
were just like,
Yep. It was the other day, I was smiling super big, said, "You might wanna let this go." I said, I'm gonna hold
no,
on for just a few minutes, a few
yeah,
seconds longer, just relish it."
well, especially with all the nonsense in the world right now and all the stuff that's really
Mhm.
tough, and we're gonna be talking about a little bit of that today on the show, but, like, when I am a firm believer that we search for the joy where we
Mhm.
can find it to
Look for the
balance out
beauty.
the stuff that is not so good, and then we don't look away, or we don't not
Bury our heads in the
acknowledge,
sand.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's my background as a social worker and yours in psychology. Like, we know what happens in our world. And also looking for the good and the beauty in the art, for me personally helps balance it out. But what do you
Absolutely.
think about doing our official intro and kicking the show off?
Yes. Yes,
Let's
let's
do it.
do it. Okay, y'all, I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon best-selling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I am your champion for natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, best-selling author and publisher, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade your self and community care.
Together, we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of Women Connected in Wisdom Community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this?
Mhm. So much, and I know we talked about a lot. How do you feel about us continuing on and bringing our guest on so we
I
can
would
give
love to talk about our
maximum space?
definition and get her up here, because I know this conversation is going to be juicy and it is going to be important for our listeners. So,
Yes.
today, y'all, we are talking about social wellness. Our definition at Women Connected in Wisdom is social wellness is about the ability to nurture ourselves, others, and our relationships with healthy boundaries. It includes, and we always put this in quote, balancing the other 7 dimensions of wellness and actively participating as an interdependent being in the web of life.
So important. So important. I know, and it's not something that we do all the time, but every now and then we talk about what stands out to us in the definition. And first here is nurture ourselves. That's
Mhm.
been the conversation I've been having this season with the different ladies and elders and leaders that I'm talking to is a lot of people, like you said, there's a lot going on. We're worried about our communities. And it's what about the column of consideration for yourself? You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like that first, and then we'll be centered well to know how to support other people from that place?
Well, and being able to pour from a full cup, or at least a cup that's got something in it. Because often as women, we give it to everybody else and we don't have anything that's left. Or,
Yeah.
we've talked about it on the show before with statistics of caregivers, how caregiving can be dangerous. And that's disproportionately women. And so really around the holidays, because, this show is airing in December,
It is.
and we've been meeting with folks who are burnout or have too much on their plate or trying to do everything at once. So yes, to that wellness about nurturing ourselves and others in our relationships. And I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk to our guests today about this and our topic.
Me too. And I know I asked to get straight into it. I do want to give a little more space for something that Still Point taught me. You and Dr. Sheila K. Collins taught me about caregivers and how our immune system is in jeopardy up to 3 years after caregiving is over. You
Mhm.
know, I haven't seen this word anywhere. I would like to throw out a compound caregiving. You know what I mean? That's not just,
Right?
like the sandwich generation or parents. I think that's leaders, managers, different people who are considering other
Mhm.
people. I think there's a lot of space for caregiving that we might not always put in that bucket, but is putting us in certain situations. So
I think we're still feeling some of the effects of that 5 years after the pandemic, honestly, because so much caregiving was happening, so much was happening, and so much compound grief, right? So I think that, yeah, that could be a whole nother show about compound caregiving.
mhm,
Absolutely.
it's true.
Today, we're talking about protecting children in a digital age, and
Yes.
our expert guest, you wanna introduce folks to her?
Yes, yes, y'all. Today we're talking to Erin Williamson. Erin Williamson is a Chief Programs and Strategy Officer at Love 146, an organization dedicated to combating child trafficking and exploitation. With over 2 decades of experience working directly with victims of crime, Erin has led the development of comprehensive programs at Love 146, including prevention, education, and survivor care, supporting over 900 youth. Her expertise spans social services and criminal justice with a focus on human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. Help us welcome to the stage Erin Williamson. Hi, Erin.
Erin, hello,
Hi.
hello.
Welcome to Women Connected in Wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I know it feels weird to say that I'm excited about having this conversation, but I really am. My background is in social work, and when I was getting my master's in social work with a clinical specialization, I did my big internship at an assessment center in Houston, Texas, the Children's Assessment Center, and working with kids who'd been affected by sexual abuse. And folks said to me during that time, like, Christine, why are you doing that one? And I was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. And it was at that time that I learned that traditional therapists, you don't always, like, even traditional therapists with clinical training can't always talk about sex and sexual abuse. And so I am excited, Erin, to have this conversation because I think it's an important one, and especially around digital, the internet. I often find myself, I'm a mom of grown kids, but I'm all like, that internet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is one of those kind of topics that everybody both wants to talk about and doesn't want to talk about at the same time.
Right. Well, and right now in the United States, we have listeners from all over the world, but the Epstein files and that horrific situation has been at the top of our news for years. So I think it is kind of like money in politics when you talk about sex. And a lot of people have a hard time talking about normal, healthy sex, much less sexual abuse. And so we'll have a trigger warning on this one for folks and let people know. But Erin, when you think about digital and protecting our kids, I first of all want you to set the stage for us. What age should we be thinking about for our kids? And tell us how to do it.
Yeah, so we actually have an email series that we have for parents, and I'll kind of how that email series goes. And if you're interested, you can go to love146.org and it's on the banner on top. But it really equates it to teaching a kid how to cross the street, right? You're not going to take your 6-year-old and drop them in the middle of New York City and say, I'm going to be back in an hour. Good luck, right? You're just not going to do that. No one would even think of doing that. And yet we hand, a tablet to a 6-year-old with no parent controls and no guidance. And that's kind of what we're doing, right? And so if we think about crossing a street, we start really young, right? We hold their hand. We don't cross busy streets right away. And we teach them how to look both ways. And we talk about why we look both ways. And we do it with them, right? And as they get older, then at some point, we're going to drop the hand. At some point, a kid is going to get to an age where they could cross the street by themselves. They can go over to their friend's house, maybe in the neighborhood. And then they're going to start crossing busier and busier streets. And the goal is that by 18, if they want to go to New York City, that they could navigate those streets successfully on their own. And I think we have to think about digital devices that way, right? The reality is kids are getting digital devices, access to them at a very young age, which means we have to start having conversations and putting boundaries around our expectations and when they can use them and when they can't and where they can go, what apps they can use and what they can't. And then as they get older, right? And as they're maturing and as they've kind of shown us they can abide by certain rules and we can, build this trust, we give them more and more access, right? By the time that they're 16, 17, they have a lot wider access to the internet, but the conversations have to start at a very young age. And it can simply start by, look, the internet you can actually use the analogy. It's kind of like New York City, right? There's lots of cars going in lots of directions and there's lots of people walking. There's lots of noises and smells. And that's what's happening on the internet, right? And we're going to start in just a little corner of the internet. Maybe we're going to start with this, ABC app or this, and we're going to teach you kind of like, how do you use a computer? How do you use a phone? And then we're going to open up, because what we have is when we just hand our kids our phone and we don't give them, then they're going on our apps, right? And then that's when we have 5 and 6-year-olds mimicking TikTok dances that are totally inappropriate for their age. And, taking selfies that are very inappropriate because they're mimicking what they're seeing.
Oh, that is a good point. That is
That
a
makes
really good
sense.
point. And just handing folks our phone. And I know Shannon, you probably have a question. I'm gonna say this one thing and then toss it to you. I have nibblings, which are twin nephews that are 6 years old. And
6.
I know, right? It's
Crazy.
wild that they're 6 now, but they always love to get on Tia's phone, right? And so you said ABCs. I have the ABC app that, you can't chat with anybody, but we do our ABCs. It's the one we always go to. And those, they are smarter than I've ever been on social media.
Mhm.
And they've showed that probably from 2 or 3 years old. Like, these kids nowadays navigate things that I didn't, because I'm of the generation that we didn't get computers until we were in high school. Shannon's a different generation, but still.
Nope, I was 14, and only because my dad was getting divorced said, "Oh, well, now we gotta pick you up from band camp and all this stuff. So
Mm-mm,
can't keep using other people's phone. I gotta be connected, like Erin said.
mm-mm,
Yeah, but I was on the same bandwagon, Christine. I feel like I'm
mm.
the last of that generation, like born in 1993. Like after that, I feel like a digital device in their hand, as they're growing up,
I
which
kinda
makes
came
sense
in
with the
with it.
age, but yeah,
And
I
everyone
still play
thinks,
Snake.
oh, this can't happen in my neighborhood, right? I'm not, oh, this wouldn't happen to the kids that my kids, and I will tell you, I deal with the work I do. My husband does, he owns it's kind of group at Yale that looks at the intersection between pediatrics and virtual reality. So he's very into gaming, right? Our kids are very well versed. And my son came home, he's in middle school. And he came home the other day from a sleepover and he told me he woke up at 1:00 in the morning. He looked over and there was another little boy on his phone. And he said, "What are you doing?" The boy showed him the app that he was on. And it was an app that was like chat roulette, where you chat with strangers. And you have to say you're 18 to be on there. And of course that boy did. And, he's just chatting with strangers. And what do you think, somebody thinks about when they're at 1 a.m. in the morning and they come across a little kid, right? Somebody who wants to take advantage of that kid knows that is a child that's not being closely monitored or watched, right? So some of this is also talking to your kids about, what apps are out there and what can happen, and also what to say, right? So one of the things that you can do at a really young age is you can teach your kids things like, our family doesn't have secrets, right?
Mhm.
Anybody ever
Yep.
asks you, can you keep a secret? You just tell them our family doesn't have secrets, right? Because when predators are looking for people, they're trying to figure out who has parents and caregivers that are looking after them and watching them and who doesn't,
Right.
right? And the kid that's on the chat roulette at 1 o'clock, that's an indication that maybe not everything's, A-okay in that kid's life. And maybe a predator might find a gap that he could promise to fill in that kid's life.
I even think when you say that, Erin, about like we don't have cell phones in our bedrooms. Like
Absolutely.
I know I'm guilty. I want to be fully transparent because I listen to a meditation app going to bed. But, really research does say it's healthier not to have it in there, to have it in a different room. And I think about if I was raising my kids now in the age of cell phone, that might be one of the things I would put in place is that you turn your phone in before you go up to your room, because Oh, I think about, when I went to bed, I would stay awake, but I'd read a book, right? I mean, it's because kids
I
do
like
that.
that.
Sometimes they're awake when their parents aren't awake. And what tool do they have accessible to them in that moment?
I
Absolutely.
like
And
that, Kristen.
there's ways that parents can even turn off their internet after a certain time or turn off the phone. There are things that you can put on the phone to monitor and to restrict access. And I know that parents are very hesitant to do that,
Mhm.
right? Or
That's
they
what I was
want to
gonna
get
ask.
right. They want to get their kid the phone that everyone else has, right? And I get that. And I understand the pressure both from the adults and from the kids group. But what I will say is that, my kid was the kid that did not get the Apple phone, right? All the kids in they might not have all had the new one, but they all had some version of it. And his bubble turned everything green, right? He didn't have the blue bubble. He had the green, and it was devastated. I mean, this was like the end of his life, and it lasted for about 6 weeks.
And he was how old?
And he 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was that, I mean, it was like his life
And
was
you
over.
were ruining his life, mom.
Absolutely. And now he does come to me and he says, "I understand now why you did it." Right? Because there have been times where we've come across things where uh, either he's said things or other kids have said things and we've had to have conversations, right? Either because they are talking about self-harm or they're talking about things that are inappropriate,
Mhm.
right? And so again, these are very normal conversations that our kids are having. And there's this question about like, well, what about their privacy, right? You're not saying they can't have privacy. What you're saying is that the phone is not the place to do that, right? They can pick up and have a conversation and that will be private. You will not hear what they're saying. They can have a journal and they can write whatever you want and you will not look in it. But
They can
any
have a diary with a lock on it that they hide
absolutely.
from their sister.
But anything they put on a screen can be shared. So they
Right.
should not think that that is private.
Right. Well, and we know that to be true in these times. And we know that to be true around women's reproductive health and like grown up topics, right? And adults, I think, need to hear that too. Like that if it's on the internet, it can be found. And if it has been on the internet, it's still on the internet. Like that's the way it works. Unless you do some deep dive of scrubbing. So,
There is an amazing app I do want people to know about called Take It Down. It's actually not an app. If you go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children,
okay.
they have something called Take It Down. And if you know of any person who is under 18 who has explicit images of themselves online, they will help you scrub the internet. They will
Oh,
take you
thank
through that and they
you.
will do it and they'll do it continuously. So it's an amazing tool. It's not a get out of jail free card because,
Right.
they can only do but so much, but it's relatively new. And I do think I'm kind of promoting it to get the word out there that there are some kind of solutions coming up to what we're seeing happening.
I love that because I think about the bullying that I've read about online. I think about, what they call them, revenge photos or things like that, where kids are doing that to each other. Some adults are doing that to each other. Um, yeah, I even as we're having this conversation, I am so glad I didn't grow up with a cell.
My goodness. When you say revenge photos, can you say more about that? Because I feel like I've heard it, but I don't know. I
So
don't think I know what it is.
we'll see. It's more normal nowadays for adolescents to send explicit images of themselves to their significant other, to somebody they might be dating, right? That has kind of been normalized, right?
Okay.
The kind of the sexy photo to the, you know,
The
the
significant
naked
other.
photo, right? Or showing
Right.
something.
Right.
And then when they
Yes.
break up, if the other person's upset with them, they'll share that photo, right? Sometimes they'll post it online. Sometimes they'll share it with their friends. They'll send it out through schools. It's kind of called revenge porn. And we do see it happening. And it actually, what we're starting to see, unfortunately, is also it happening on gaming systems and people being asked to send explicit photos on gaming systems. And especially, we don't always talk about it, but it's happening a lot with boys on the gaming systems.
Mhm.
And I think because of all of the stereotypes around gender and around disclosure
Mhm.
and around masculinity, it can very quickly escalate, especially among boys. Not to say it's not also can very escalate among girls, but we're seeing even quicker somewhat with boys, to the point that some are, taking their lives because it's happening.
Yeah.
So it can become
Yeah.
very serious. And again, I understand the hesitancy. I understand that parents have and that kids have. But when you do hear the stories of what happens when it does go wrong, the stakes
Mhm.
can be so high. And we're talking about kids who
Mhm.
are not thinking long term, right? These are
Right.
developmentally, they're
Their
at a
brains are
stage.
not fully developed. Yeah.
Right. And everything feels so big and feels so emotional to them that if something like revenge porn happens, it feels like this is going to define the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And then they can take actions that are sometimes irreversible.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. So we've talked a little about being trauma informed on the podcast before. Can you talk about what that means to you and what does that look like in a situation like this when somebody is dealing with somebody who falls into these situations? How do you make sure that they're very well taken care of?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is to remain non-judgmental when you're working with somebody, right? I think that it's very easy for many of us to say I would have or you should have or I told you you X Y and that's an easy response and part of what that response does is it's a self-care response actually. It's a I can't believe this happened to you. I am going to figure out the why, right? And I'm going to justify that, oh, this happened because you did this or because you broke the rule, right? And you're trying to understand the why to something that just happened that's so horrible, right? And the reality is that sometimes just bad things happen, right? We all think back on our childhood and our adolescent years, especially. I think we can all remember times and places where but for the grace of God, like something worse did not happen, right? That is part of adolescence. That's part of growing up. And sometimes bad things do happen, right? And it's sometimes there's no reason or rhyme. And sure, maybe they did break a rule or maybe they did do something that wasn't smartest, but usually there was a reason why, right? Usually it was because they were looking for love or they really trusted that person or they had hoped that, the outcome would have been different. But it's not helpful to relitigate the what could have been. What's helpful in that moment is to sit with that person, to hear them, to be a space where they can feel seen and not judged.
Absolutely. And Christine, I don't know if it was live or before the show. I think it was live. We were talking about how even some trained to have conversations and walk through difficult things that people
Right.
aren't trained to have. So can we get even more specific into so what does it look like to be trauma informed and help people who identify and have been sexually assaulted? What is that? Because that's different than me with shea butter and you got a cut and I'm telling you put some aloe on it. Like that's a different type of comeback to your body to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to know not everyone has to do this work, right? I think that's the most important thing, right? If this is something that you can't imagine having this conversation or it makes you feel super uncomfortable, that's fine. Know that about yourself. Own that this isn't work for everybody to do, right? That's why there are people that do this work and say, this is actually, I actually enjoy this work. And to Christine's point, you might not think that this is something that someone would say that about. But what I love about it is that the resiliency of the kids, right? The kids I work with are so resilient. They're hysterical, right? I love the adolescent years. I love walking through alongside somebody trying to figure out who they are in the world. And these are kids just like every other kid. They just
Right.
happen to have been through this experience, right? And so I think, say that it's okay to yourself to find the right person to have that conversation. And
Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shayla Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shayla Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about 3 groups really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all 3 steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. The story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade, and it smells great, y'all. So
yes,
yay.
esthetician tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, I work with individual coaching clients. I work in community classes and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength-based, embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
And if you're in a different type of relationship, you're somebody's aunt or somebody's uncle, and you feel compelled to have this conversation, right? You can take it as far as you feel comfortable, right? And always say, let's go find some other help together, right? Let's go find someone that maybe knows more than we do and where we can get some help. But I think saying like, I'm going to help you find the help you need. I'm going to make sure I do kind of like I connect you. We do this together. So it's kind of like wrapping them and taking them to the next person that might be more able and capable and have different skill sets or different focus that can really give them maybe more of the therapeutic intervention that they need. But you're still showing that kid in that moment, I'm here for you. I care about you. I see you. You have someone in your life that's by your side. And I don't want to undervalue the message that sends to that child in that moment, because that is a strong message.
Huge.
Absolutely.
And I want to back us up a little bit, Erin, because say you are that auntie, you're their favorite Tia, you're their Girl Scout leader or Boy Scout leader. What can we do that's proactive? Because I know when I was raising my kids, often they would talk to a trusted adult besides me before they would bring it to me. They would often bring it to me because I had these conversations from the time they were tiny. Like I was doing this work when my kids were 4 and a newborn. And I will never forget it because, I read case file after case file and I came home and I was like turn on the alarm. And my husband's like, why? And I'm like, I cannot tell you. I will process that with my therapist. But, we've been having these conversations for years. But even then, they would talk to an aunt or somebody else often before they would bring it to me because they wanted to test it out or they wanted to, or they knew we'd been talking about it for years and they did something that they knew that I would have a fit about, right? I wouldn't in the moment. I'd be calm and, but they knew me. So how do we be proactive with our kids and neighborhoods and people we love? How do we start these conversations?
Yeah, I think part of one of the most important things with all adolescents, and not just for this topic, but just adolescents in general, is, we set a lot of rules as parents or as caregivers or as coaches or teachers, right? We set a lot of rules for these kids about what our expectations are for their behavior, right? And I think we also need to then say, and, right? I'm telling you the rules, and I know that you are in a period of life where part of your job is to push those rules, to push up against those boundaries, to see what you can get away with, to see how far you can go. And what I want you to know is that even if you break one of those rules, because at some point you will, whether it's my rule, whether it's a teacher's rule, whether it's you're going to break a rule. The most important thing in that moment is not that you broke that rule. It's your safety. That's the most important thing, right? And whatever it is, we will figure it out together. And if I'm not the person you feel comfortable going to, go to another trusted adult and permission that early on, right? Some kids will not tell anyone because they think their parent will be upset if they go to someone else, but they don't want to go to their parent. So then they don't tell anyone, which is worse.
Well, and I think one of the things that people don't understand if they don't have a lot of experience in this field is that child predators groom kids to make them scared to tell or to make them afraid that if they tell, they're going to hurt their parent or that, I mean, some of the extreme ones like make threats. And
Yeah.
so sometimes they don't tell because they're being protective. They're protecting somebody. And so I think that that's an important thing to know and to be paying attention to the signs. Like, are they up in the middle of the night? Are they going? But we talked a little bit about this before you came online. So I want to make sure we put this out in the conversation. Are any apps safe for children these days?
Yeah. So what we talked about a little bit before we came on was that we actually recently had a kid trafficked on Pinterest. So, which is not an app that you would normally think of when you think about, human trafficking. And so, the common question we do get asked is kind of what apps are safe or what app should I stay away from? And I think we're kind of missing the point. I think that question maybe 10, 15 years ago was an appropriate question, but there's so many apps out there now and they're changing so rapidly. And so many apps have direct messaging embedded within them that, I think really what we need to do is teach our kids skill sets and give them information. And you're right, predators do really groom, right? And so there oftentimes is nothing in that initial interaction that should kind of tell that youth, hey, you've just met someone that's going to now groom you and exploit you, right? So part of the conversation is who you interact with online and what type of interactions that you have. And then also what happens when one of those interactions becomes inappropriate, right? And I can just tell you if you think that your kid is not going to get inappropriately messaged, you're wrong. Like it happens so quickly. It happens so, I mean, I'm not even on much social media and I get text messages from random people that are totally inappropriate. So your kid is going to get, approached in an inappropriate manner and talking to them about how they respond to that. And again, permissioning that, like, if something goes wrong, if you do something that oh, mom's going to be so upset that I did that or dad's going to, we will figure it out together. And I just want you to know that nothing is more important to me than your safety, that I'm not going to be hurt if someone says that. That's not true. Saying kind of taking some of these claims. And the other thing is that sometimes kids don't tell us not because somebody's threatened us and they're worried about our physical safety, but they're worried about our mental safety, right? We've had kids disclose information to us and they said, I've been carrying that for 10 years, but you're the first person that I felt got it and could take it. Right. And they just, the analogy I oftentimes use with youth, which I think is really helpful. If you have a youth in your life where you think something's happening, right? I don't know what it is. Oftentimes, for example, a lot of people think that their kids are doing drugs when they're being trafficked because some of the behavior mimics that of secrecy and not sharing and maybe even running away for periods of time or being secret to who they're talking to. But, one of the things we say to kids is, everybody has a bucket. You have a bucket. We all have buckets. And all of our buckets are filled with rocks. And the rocks are all the things that have happened to us in our life and that might have hurt us and all the secrets that we carry. Right. And some of those rocks are little pebbles and some of those rocks are pretty big. Right. And the truth is that the only way to lighten your bucket is to start giving away some of those rocks. And you don't have to give all those rocks to the same person. And you don't have to start with the biggest rock in there. You can start with the little pebbles and you can see how someone reacts. And then say, do I want to give that person another pebble or maybe a bigger rock? And that can be a great analogy to give someone. And then you can follow up with that youth in a week or in two. Have you given any of your rocks away? Right? And it's such an easy way to kind of keep that conversation going. Have you thought about giving any of your rocks away? Oh, you did. You gave one of your rocks to your best friend. How'd it go? Right? You can have this whole conversation about trauma and secrets and without having to talk exactly about the specifics. And yet you can talk to that youth about how to lighten their load.
I like that. What I hear you saying for trauma informed is that sounds like a very textbook term, right? To be trauma informed, listen to the person who went through the experience and they may inform you if they are comfortable. And then
Absolutely.
if you are not that expert, walk with them, wrap them in non-judgment and love and community and get them to the best resource that you guys have available to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Kids choose to disclose who they disclose to. Right?
Mhm.
And they oftentimes are very calculated who they choose, right? There has to be someone that they trust. It has to be someone that they think might be in a position to help them, right? And
Mhm.
and so many times we have so many stories of people that don't disclose until later in life.
Mhm.
So the other thing to do is to we have kids in and out of our house all the time, right? We have two young ones, their friends are over all the time. Saying to them, you guys are great. You're over here all the time. I just want you guys to know that, like, we really care about you. I know you all have families, but if any of you ever need anything or need someone to talk to, I just want you to know that we're also here for you. We also care about you. Because the reality is that not everyone is coming from a safe home. And not everyone is coming from parents or caregivers where they feel like they can share and talk. And so saying to that child, I could be that for you if you want, is so powerful because, you know, some of the kids are going to brush it off and think, oh, that's weird. But the kid who needs to hear that, they're going to
Yep.
tuck that piece of information away.
I have kids that still come back to me years later. Like when you establish that with kids, like I was a Girl Scout leader I had a troop, they were second graders going into third grade all the way to college. And when you have healthy relationships with people, they know if you're a safe person or not, right? They know when they can bring things to you. And I was looking at your website at the love146.org website and the resources that y'all have for people. Like you have webinars, you have safety online pages, you have resources and tips. So we will for sure put that in the show notes. But I I'm sitting here because, I'm thinking about the age that I raised my kids, and I felt so inadequate about this. And I had like some professional training around this. So this is the other thing I think I want to say is can be challenging. This can be challenging depending on how you were raised and what you were to talk about or not. And not just about sexual exploitation of kids, but the online bullying and the suicidal ideation and all those things, right? really, I think about as a parent the times I've had to respond to my kids or my kids' friends. And one of the things I think about is really making sure you're grounded and that you are taking care of yourself and that you are able to respond from a place of calm and listening versus panic. You know, I've gotten that
So
call.
so
Yeah, go ahead.
can we go deeper there with how to do that as a parent, right? Because I imagine I'm like, my mind now as a parent, I'm like, wherever I'm at, thinking about the millions of details and all the things that you're responsible for. If you were coming, let's say you're coming from a party or coming to a party to pick up your child, right? And they're telling you about something that's happened. How do you, if you were in the whirlwind of caregiving, parenting, and wherever you are in your life, was there something that you're like, oh, I'm about to go off the hinge. Maybe I should reframe this. Was there like something that you're like, oh, I might need to calm
Mhm.
down before I listen to this? Or are you just saying that people have to know themselves to know that? Was it something specific that showed you that
I
in
think it's a
those
yes
moments?
and, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a yes and for me, it was always the buddy system, right? Um, we always had a rule at my household that no matter what, you could call me and I would come pick you up. And it didn't matter if you broke a rule, it didn't matter if you were somewhere you were not supposed to be. If you felt unsafe, you could come pick me up.
Yep.
And one day I got this call. I had come home from doing errands and I was like, where's so and so? And my husband was like, oh, she went with so and so to the festival. I'm like,
Mm,
what festival? And they were like, oh, it was the you've lived in Atlanta, Shannon. So it was the beer festival that we had every year. I was like,
okay.
who's driving? And named the friend's dad. And I was like, they went to a festival with an adult that we know drives and drinks, and they're at a beer festival. Wait, what? And so it was about this time that I either checked in with them or they checked in with me. And I was like, oh, and they said, hey, mom, I need you to come get me. So and so's been drinking and I'm not comfortable. And I was like, on the way. And that friend's kid also got in my car because they weren't comfortable. And it was one of those situations that my partner was like, "Oh, they're coming home. They'll be home soon." I was like, "I'm not comfortable. Kid's not comfortable. We're going." Right? And had to really talk about it and what we think about. And I'm thinking. I'm sorry. My words are tripping because all these memories of different calls I've gotten over the
You're
years.
doing
Because
great.
I got a call one time. Oh, my kids were older. Dating, online dating is a whole nother subject, right? Um, got a call. My kiddo had left on a date, and I get a call that says, "I need you to come get me right now." I'm like, "I'm on my way." And my kids are actually the ones that put trackers on our phones versus the other way around.
Mm,
They are the ones that did the Life 360 and were like, "We need to know where everybody's at."
mm,
And I thought at first, because I was the parent, like, "Oh, I don't want to be the helicopter
yeah.
parent. I don't want to hover." And I'm so grateful to have it because if my kids call me and say, "I need you to come get me," they don't even have to tell me where they are. We have a code word. We have like, I'm on the way, and
Yeah.
then we'll figure out what's happening once we get there. So I don't know if I answered your question, Shannon, but for me,
Mm,
it's that taking a deep breath, and it's have we had the conversation already. So it's not a matter of there's no yes, no in my mind. It's yes.
mhm.
That's our agreement as a family. You call me, yes, I don't care what I'm doing. They could call right now and I'd say, gotta go, y'all.
And
So
she
how
does.
does it
Yep.
work in your family, Erin?
So, I think we have our kids are a little younger. So,
Mhm.
but we have really normalized kind of both apologizing for our behavior and also kind of noting when we think people are having an overreaction, right? Because Shannon, to your point, like we all do our best to respond calmly, right? And it's so much easier for me when I'm with a youth and I know I'm supposed to be calm. Then I walk in, I'm all, but when it's my own kids, right? And I'm in my house and sometimes I'm thinking about something that happened during the day, or to your point, I'm thinking of all the things that I need to do that I didn't get
Right.
done during the day. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden they start talking to me. Sometimes I can immediately be just like, no, 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 no. They have that response, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And I have, and sometimes I need to apologize, right? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, that was not about you. I'm freaking out. Like, give me a minute, right? Can I take 2 minutes? Can I go calm myself and then we'll come back, right? We do something where we'll change into pajamas, right? Let me go change into pajamas. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna be in a different mindset, right? But
Ooh,
it's
I
got
love that transition.
right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's gotten so normalized that now our kids will start to call us out. Like, "Mom, you're you're overreacting."
You need your
Right?
pajamas.
Right, and but it's super helpful because I
Yeah.
think, they know when our reaction is not in proportion, and so certainly, again, if I'm gonna, pick my kid up and I know I'm getting into a situation, where they're gonna share something, like if my kid comes off the bus and I can tell by their face that something's gonna be shared on that ride home, then I know to kind of get in that, like, calm. But sometimes they hit you from a side and you don't even know it's coming, right? And your reaction it's okay if you have an initial reaction that you think, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that," right? Like, that's normal, that's life. The key in that moment is to then kind of own it, right? And you're teaching your kid by doing that, right? You're teaching your kid, like, we all make mistakes. We all sometimes overreact. We all sometimes say things we shouldn't say. Like, the most important thing is we just own it, right? No one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect.
So true.
Right? Like, I think that there's this expectation that we have as parents that we must be perfect, right? And that if somehow the reality is, like, we're all making it up as we go, right? There were no instruction manuals. There's way too many books to read at Barnes and Noble, right? They half of them say different things. We're
Oof.
we're doing our best, and we
Yeah.
all are born with kids who have different personalities,
Mhm.
different abilities, different everything, and we're doing our best. And we're going to take those deep breaths as much as we can think about it. And when we mess up, we just got to own it.
Yeah.
What I love about what I hear you ladies saying is how simple it is. And these questions are not from an inexperience on my end of dealing with things like this with students on college campus and the different groups and teams that I've led and helped. What I'm thinking about is one of my old favorite shows, Law and Order SVU. And I was just tired of starting to hear my friends tell stories of not being received well and what actually happened. And then you're actually called a liar because you don't want to go through it anymore. But then it's entertainment, and we all love to watch these shows over and over again, but we don't listen to these ladies like we listen to Olivia and the girls. I grew up with Olivia, but what happens in the real situations. And so that's what you're hearing, the lean on the questions, because I would love to see in real life people be more set up and plugged into resources like you have at Love 146. So I want to ask one more question about the parents, because I have a godmom, that I talked to and we got close. The difference was I didn't know my mom at that time. Um, and so I thought this was me plugging in resources, trying to figure out how to be a young lady and eventually have daughters one day. You ladies are telling me all kids talk to people outside of their parents, probably first before their parents. Okay. If you're that parent that thinks you have a good relationship with your child, right? I would love to hear, Erin, what you usually hear. Why are those children not talking to their parents? Maybe their parents think they're doing a good job. What are the hesitations that you're hearing that maybe we can help the parents create some safer environments for more open dialogue?
Yeah, and I think, oftentimes it's because they love their parents, right? And they want to protect them, right? And they don't want their parents to have to deal with this on top of maybe all the other stressors in their life, right? Maybe they know their parents are carrying a lot, right? And some of our kids are coming from families where they have housing and food insecurity, where the parents have multiple jobs, where they're trying to, there's parents and families are going through a lot. You talked about the pandemic earlier. I forget if it was during the show or before the show.
Yes, sure.
That those lingering things are that's real, right? Parents have multiple kids. They might know something's going on with their brother or their sister that's stressing out their parent. So oftentimes it's not that the parent, I'm sure there are some parents that, it's not safe at home or they haven't created that relationship. But I think when parents really want to have that type of relationship and feel they do, I think that they do. It's more that the kid wants to protect them. And so I think that, when kids go and disclose to somebody else and it might not be you, you know, instead of saying, oh, like being hurt by that and saying, I'm so hurt that they didn't feel they could come to me, reframe that in your mind. What an amazing job you did empowering that child to get the help they need and permissioning that child to go to whoever they needed to for that help. And I think you should really, to the best of your ability, that child went to your sister or their teacher or their counselor because they loved you and they wanted to protect you. And you can say, I'm so proud of you for going and sharing what happened to you and getting the help you. I'm so proud of you. And what can I do as your mom or as your aunt to help you, right? What's the role you want me to play? Because they might say, I don't want you to be my counselor, mom. I want you to be my escape. I want you to still be the fun person that comes with me and plays with me on the weekends and takes me to church or takes me to soccer or whatever. I don't want you to be the person that I talk about this with. I want to know that when I go to my therapy sessions, I talk about it there and then I shut that door and I don't have to think about it or talk about it for another week, right? They might want that. So asking them, what role can I play? How can I help you? Again, really empowers them and shores up that whatever you're creating in that next period of life is something that is going to work for both of you.
Oh, thank you, Erin. I think we skirted around this earlier, so I want to make sure we say it before we close the show. And you probably have some of the latest statistics, but like this can happen to anybody. It's all across demographics, ages, socioeconomic. Because I was thinking, oh, we probably should have started the show with it about this really, I think when parents think, oh, this wouldn't happen to me. I live in this kind of neighborhood, or I live here, or I'm paying attention, can you say a little bit about that, about the kids that are being impacted?
Sure. Yeah. And you're absolutely right, right? Predators go after whatever that kid is missing, right? And so sure, for some kids, it might be food insecurity or housing insecurity. It might be that their system involved. It also might be that their parents are absent, right? We have pulled up and served kids from two-parent households where their parents are, their house is, what many people would consider a mansion. And that kid's vulnerability was that their parents were workaholics and they just were not paying attention to what that child was doing online, right? So the reality is, and it doesn't always lead to trafficking, right? Like the idea is we want to stop all sorts of exploitation of children, right? And that includes the sextortion, that includes the revenge porn. It includes all of it, right? We don't want kids to be exploited. And it does happen at all socioeconomics, levels. I do want to say that we do see a disproportionate impact on Black and brown kids. We do. We see it. It's Black and brown and LGBTQ. We do. We see it. And we do see disproportionate at lower socioeconomics. And if you think about why, it's because of the vulnerabilities that make these kids vulnerable for so many other things, also make them vulnerable for trafficking, right? And so, I agree it can happen in any community, and we've served kids from every community. And we also need to recognize that kids who are more vulnerable for trafficking are oftentimes more vulnerable for all sorts of
All
things.
the things. Yeah. Well, and especially if you've got two parents that are or even one parent that's working around the clock to be able to afford a roof over their head, right? It's that I could see how that could lead to it very easily. Shannon, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I have one more question before we go to wisdom and action, or if you have anything else, Christine. I want to be specific because, I'm on Pinterest probably every day. I'm looking at nails, I'm looking at food. I was looking at muffins last night. You know what I mean? Like when I think about trafficking, I think about a list of things, but especially this project I did in undergrad, and we were talking about the airport in Atlanta, right? I'm thinking about physically
And
moving
bus
somebody.
stations.
I'm thinking, you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? I'm thinking about vacation. But when we talk about chats, then I'm thinking about different conversations that could be had, pictures, things like that you're talking about. So when we say trafficked on Pinterest, what exactly are we talking about? And when we're talking about, um, I guess really the umbrella of the topic, can we give people a range so that they know kind of where this starts, the level of severity, and then up from there?
Sure. Yeah. And so, when you're thinking of kind of what is child sex trafficking, the easiest way to think about it is there's no such thing as a child prostitute, right? So anytime you would think of, oh, well, that's prostitution. Nope, that's trafficking, right? That's
Mhm.
it doesn't require movement across borders. I know that is a misconception a lot of people have, and we do a lot of awareness and outreach in places of transportation, which sometimes, often kind of feeds into that perception. But it really is anytime there's any kind of commercial sex in exchange for anything of value. So that could be money, that could be drugs, that could be a safe place to stay, and that can start with conversations online and go and then be taken offline. Right? You can have somebody that the child meets online and then starts engaging in private messages and then agrees to meet up with, and then the exploitation happens offline. You can also have the exploitation start online, right? Sharing images, sharing pictures, sharing videos. There we have normalized a lot of apps where it's not uncommon for a kid to say, "Well, I'm just going to share my feet, and I'll make a ton of money for all the people who have feet fetishes." Right? These are conversations that kids have nowadays because they hear people talk about it in the celebrity circles, right? They hear people talk about it on shows and on movies, and it has kind of been normalized. And I think when I just want to kind of go to the flip side when we're talking about working with this population, what really has happened to these kids is not only has there been sexual violence, but their body has been commodified. And so now when that child has hunger insecurity or housing insecurity, or when they just want a little extra cash to get something, they know how to get it, right? They know, and they're making a choice in a way that other kids don't make that choice because it doesn't even cross their mind that is how they could get money, or that is how they could help their parents pay rent, because it hasn't happened to them, right? And sometimes our kids are sold at different prices based on their identity, based on their race, or based on how pretty they are, or based on their hair color. And so now not only do they understand their body as a commodity that can be sold, they understand their value and worth based on these physical characteristics and identity issues. And so when we're now talking to the 16, 17, 18-year-old about getting a job and creating a future that's economically independent, it's very valid for them to ask, why would I go work at McDonald's and make minimum wage when I could make $1,000 tonight? And those are real conversations that need to be validated and need to be walked through with someone who can have that conversation and really validate that for that kid, that is an okay question to ask, and it should not be dismissed. And you need to talk with that kid about short term and long term and what their goals are and what does it mean to have a career, and because really, again, we're talking about brains that are not fully developed. They're only thinking of the immediate. Many of the kids we work with, after they've experienced the trauma they've experienced, they believe they will die young. Many of them have had guns held to their head or knives held to their throat. They have almost died before. And so this idea that I'm going to plan for a future where I'm 50 or 60 and putting in money to a 401k for a retirement, that is not existing in their life. And so that's why I say it is really important to connect these kids to professionals that have experience walking through it, and also that can share that information with the parents and caregivers, because to a parent and caregiver, their initial reaction might be very flippant, right?
Mm.
And why would you do that? And sometimes they say, they engage in name calling. They don't mean it in a mean way. They just don't understand the trauma that comes with this type of victimization.
Yeah.
Thank you for that
Well,
specificity.
and I know we're out of time, but I feel like we could keep going and going, especially what's playing out on our national stage and protection of victims and all of the whys and what fors about people not coming forward for various reasons. And Erin, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for sharing these resources and giving parents and caregivers and community members tools to help protect kids and even themselves, maybe online. Like, that's the thing, because you don't know if you don't know.
Yep.
So I think it is so very valuable.
Mhm.
Thank
Every
you.
week. Yes, of course, and, no, I lost it, I forgot what I was gonna say. If I remember, I'll add it on the end. But every week, we talked about it a little bit earlier, we talk about what we're doing for ourselves intentionally for that dimension of wellness. So, what are you doing for yourself this week for social
We're in
wellness,
social
Erin?
wellness. Yeah.
Yes. So we were talking a little bit before we started the show about boundaries. And I know you mentioned it in your intro. And I was saying that, I think at different stages of life, we need to revisit our boundaries, right? Because our relationships change, who's in our life changes, our relationship to those people changes. And so I actually have bought a workbook that I am slowly going through that is really helping me to not just think about it, but it's forcing me to write down, which I think makes your brain think a little differently when you actually have to write it down. What are the boundaries I want to have with different people in my life? What are the boundaries where I feel like they maybe have gotten away from me? And I find that doing these exercises just helps throughout the week to reframe, okay, what is my goal at this stage in my life? What do I want? Where do I want to spend my time and energy? And I'm not saying I always do it right, but I think having those reminders through those weekly exercises has just been really helpful.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful. And when you say writing it down, what's been helping me be intentional about my wisdom in action is making it an actual hashtag that is like an action step. So what would you say? Hashtag working on my workbook? Like, what would you say? What's your hashtag?
I would say hashtag realizing my boundaries. And by
Okay.
realizing, I mean both recognizing them and then realizing them into reality through either words and sharing with people. This is a boundary I'm going to set, or walking away from things that are just not helpful and not filling.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
That's a good reminder for all of us, especially this time of year. Shannon, what about you? What's your wisdom in action this week?
Mm. I do have hashtag revisiting boundaries. I love it. You
Mhm.
know, we were talking
Mhm.
before the show, and I would love to give people, our listeners, this too. Erin was talking about biannually checking in, right? Maybe every 6 months. You know, I love what you said about the seasons. Coach Cole reminds us of that. One of our authors and narrators, she writes about social wellness and like the evolution of a friendship and this story about this wedding she was invited to and what happened, you know? So I've been thinking about it, but I really like maybe every 6 months. Maybe it needs to be a little more than the year review, you know, to revisit it. So when I say revisiting boundaries, I'm talking about for myself, where am I at in relationships, you know, and moving here now it's, you know, people we spend the holidays with, we spend every day with now, which is a beautiful thing. And what does that look like? So that's what I'm thinking about.
Mm,
Hmm. What
good
about you,
stuff.
Christine?
Well, I have so many I'm thinking about this week, but this is the time of year between November and December and the end of the year that I am doing kind of an audit, and I am looking at what worked this year. And that does include my boundaries and a self-care test. And I'm looking at my calendar, I'm looking at my photos, and I'm compiling a win list. So I think my hashtag this week is compile my win list.
I love it.
Because, and I may specifically look at the social wellness, like of what gatherings worked, what brought me joy, like who are the people that I just loved hanging out with. Because often at this stage in life for me, it's like making more time. I have to make the time to see the friends that I want to see, because otherwise I'm off, working too much. So I think that it's important to check in with that and say, who do I want to see, or what do I wanna where do I wanna create for this coming up year? So,
I love that. You were talking
mm.
earlier about the art projects. I thought that you were gonna tell us you got a purple parachute for the art installation that you wanted to do to honor Aunt Joan. That's what I was waiting for. That's what I thought you were
Oh,
gonna tell
well, no, I already have Aunt Joan's parachute. So,
Okay.
I have her parachute that is no longer jumpable, and she, had said to me, "I don't think anybody will want this when I die," and I'm like, "I absolutely want that, Aunt Joan. I'm gonna do an art installation." And that's part of 2026. I just have to find the place because, like, parachutes are big. So I have to have a two-story place for that art installation
Ooh, that's
and a
gonna
couple
be
of
so
weeks
good.
to do it, right? I've been looking around for artist in residency places, and, I think that'll bubble up because that one's been on the books for a couple of years now. So,
I'm excited for you.
Erin, thank you so much for your work in the world. Thank you for this conversation. Um, Please tag us at Women Connected in Wisdom. And if you have more resources or events happening, tag us. We will share it with our community. And we will put all your information of how to reach you at love146.org in our show notes. So if folks have more questions or things that they need, they can reach out to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation, really,
We're
really
so,
filled up my cup.
so great.
So thank you.
Oh, good, good, good. Thanks for the awesome job you're doing. We appreciate you.
Yes, and I'm glad you that's what I was gonna say, and I'm glad you love your work. I'm glad you love it. That's really
Yeah,
important, so I
that's
get what you were
important.
saying, but I'm glad
Yeah,
that, yeah, that's important, and including that they have that when they have you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Of
thank you.
course.
Ah, such good stuff. We are
Yeah.
so over.
I
Sati
know
is
we're
gonna
over.
be like, "That was a good convo. Y'all went long." Thank you, Sati. We appreciate
Yes,
you. I
yes,
think the only thing we need to let folks know, we'll be here next week, live at
yes.
5, then we're gonna take
Mhm.
a couple of weeks off,
Yeah, we
but,
are.
you can connect with us on socials. If you haven't subscribed over at your YouTube, meet us over at YouTube and like and subscribe. We're trying to get our community over there. We have a lot of fun stuff coming for you at the start of 2026, and, make sure you're connected so you get our updates. Is there anything else you wanna tell folks, Shannon, before we're out of here?
No, no, I think we've done a great job. I think we're ready to wrap episode 210. Thank you guys so much for being here, for the downloads. Tell us which part of this works best for you, what you loved out of the episode.
And what your social wellness hashtag is this week.
Yeah,
What is
what's your
your
wisdom in
wisdom in
action?
action? We'd love to hear and support you. All
Mhm.
right.
All
In
right,
the
y'all.
meantime,
Be well, be wise, be whole. Talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.